Hey everybody, XEI here. Welcome back to a Let's Read of Dragon Age, The Stolen Throne by David Gaider. We're going to continue on with Chapter 2. I am re-recording this intro. I am reading this book blind, but this intro is being re-recorded because I, of course, forgot to turn on my microphone recording software, and so I had to make do with the webcam's audio, which is a little crappy. And so the first, a couple pages of Chapter 2 are going to be crappier sound. I apologize for that ahead of time. You'll know when you get to that point. But I do want to give the intro over again because maybe I can do it in a much more succinct fashion now that I've done it once, and I've sort of edited it to kind of get my thoughts together. And so what I want to do here is I've created this thing called a narrative patterns framework, or narrative patterns matrix, whatever I want to call it. I don't know. It's not official or anything like that. It's a little bit of an exercise for me to think about how these narrative patterns come into play inside literature, inside movies, inside TV shows, comics, graphic novels, whatever. And I like to do this exercise just to analyze the validity of these patterns. So the summary of the narrative matrix, or the narrative, again, I don't have a name for this, but the summary of this is that narrative patterns exist as ratios, so that certain beats, certain story elements happen at certain times, and then there's ways that you use these elements throughout the story so that you create an experience that is captivating for the audience and memorable for the audience. These aren't hard rules. These patterns can be broken, and they are, and the industry plays with these, but I guarantee you the industry, whether subconscious or not, are aware of these patterns, and they use them inside any sort of writing, any sort of storytelling. Just to give a little bit of background too as to why this interests me, I've always been interested in things in storytelling as early as oral tradition. Just in oral tradition, before writing even, patterns existed, and patterns existed because it allowed the storytellers to remember certain key ideas, patterns, so that when they're telling the story, they would know that they had to hit these beats while telling the story, because this was before a time when you could write things down and record them on tablets, chiseling them in tablets. Anyways, and I don't even know where I'm kind of all over the place, even though I'm recording this for the second time. But let me just go straight into the introduction. I'm going to dive into the deep end here, and then maybe while doing it for this book, while using this book as an example to kind of go through these narrative patterns, we'll have an example then where I can have an episode that I go a little bit more deeply into what these patterns mean and how the kind of construction works, these racial constructions work. The first pattern, the easy one, is the introduction pattern. It's made up of three things. It's made up of establishing the setting, establishing the theme, and establishing the story. Now, the ratio to this so far is that, because I've already worked out the ratio based on page count, we have 400 page count here. The story starts at page 11. I plugged in the page count into this formula to get my ratios, and it just gives me benchmarks that I can aim for, and I can organize my thoughts around, okay, during the page 11, which is the first page of this book, and page 17, we're going to get ourselves the setting, and we're going to get ourselves the theme. So far as the setting, it's going to be a dark fantasy. We get that right off the bat in the first couple pages, which is when you have to establish the setting for whatever you're creating. It's a dark fantasy. It's a story about someone who's running away, hiding themselves behind an identity, and has to find themselves. So setting is more than just what's the genre, what's the tone of the book, although that is the main part of it. But it's also what story am I about to go into? As a writer, what story are you giving me, and do I enjoy that kind of story? If I don't like dark fantasies where it's about a hero trying to find themselves, then this book probably isn't for me, and that's why you have to set up the setting up front. You want people to be able to bail out early if it's not for them. Then we have the theme. Establish the theme. If I had to summarize the theme in one word off the first 17 pages of Chapter 1, legacy. It's about legacy. It's about a hero that loses his mother to the enemy. She gets killed, and he doubts himself, which is, of course, it's a trope of the literature as well. Doubts himself, and it's about him having to come to terms with the fact that he inherits this legacy, and does he take it or not, and how does he get it back? So it's his struggle and his discovery of himself in order to capture that legacy back. So that's the theme. And again, I'm going at this blind, but establishing the theme is important because that theme will exist as a through line throughout the entire experience of this novel. On top of that, in the last chunk of pages here will be when Maric comes to terms with that legacy. It'll be him coming to terms. It'll come back around to that theme. And then the third part of this, establishing the story, that's something I can't summarize yet because based on the page count here, chapter 2 concludes the first half of that introduction pattern, and then I'll be able to summarize what I think the story is all about. Establishing the story is about introducing the characters that are going to matter for the rest of this story. So in the next 20 pages or so in chapter 2, we're going to get a list of names, and those names are going to have value for the entire experience of this book, and that's how that first pattern works. As I read chapter 2, I will stop especially on new names because that's what that next piece is going to be about. I'll highlight them so that I can remember them going forward, so that we have a catalyst for discussion inside the comments. And then of course I will talk about things in the conclusion of this video where I'll try to bring some of these thoughts all together, and yeah, we'll go from there. Cool. So I'm going to now cut to the crappy audio because I would rather you guys get that blind than me pretending to read and catching these things and coming back to you. So again, I apologize for the crappy audio for the next, I don't know, couple minutes. I don't know how far I got. It may be 5 or 6 pages in, so we still got a lot to get through, and you'll know when it gets better again. Cool, because I'll have this going all proper, like I'll catch you when I catch you. So 3 pages into chapter 2, we get introduced to a new character. I don't have a name for her yet, but she seems to be part of the Chantry, or was part of the Chantry. Maric is basically getting tended to because of the wounds he suffered during the escape. And so there's a hut here where Maric is getting tended to by this woman of the Chantry. He's looking at her confused because he's trying to figure out, like, what is someone of the Chantry doing at in a settlement like this, which is a very illegal settlement at this point. She says, "Oh dear me, no, nothing so grand as that. My days within the Chantry hierarchy are long behind me, I'm afraid." I still don't have anything further than that, but I figured it's important to just say that now, just in case nothing comes of it, and I wanted to get that down because that would be important either way, and I'll get into that later on. So I'm going back into the book. And we have another name. We have Gareth. Gareth is the person in charge of this settlement, and this Chantry lady says that's Loghain's father, if you haven't met him yet. So it looks like Maric's about to meet Gareth, and then we're going to go from there. Ah, we have a name. I am Sister Alice. We have a name. I have this thing with names. Did I talk about Maric and Loghain names yet? Maybe I'll do that in the conclusion. You know, when you think of Sister Alice, you got ailments, stuff like that. So, don't think it's accidental. We have some thoughts as to why Maric concealed his identity. And mostly it's because of the idea that he understood that these people were desperate. And desperate people, knowing that they might have someone in their midst that might come from nobility, they would be worth a lot of sovereigns. To protect himself, to get help, to heal, to back to health, whatever the case might be. That's why he covered up his identity. Makes tons of sense. He does tell the sister that all the blood that's covering his arms right now, it's mostly not his, and it happened because he killed someone who was attacking him. He was defending himself, and he does tell the sister that they killed his mother. So that's interesting to note. Because of course now he's like seeded someone with the information that someone like a Loghain, who seems to be superbly perceptive, intuitive in things. If he comes across this information, if he finds out what happened at the camp with the rebel, blah blah, Loghain would be the person to put this together. So as Maric asks her, "So if you're a priest, what are you doing here?" And her response is to talk about how when the Maker decided upon a bride, he didn't go to the Imperium to choose the bride. He went to the fringes of barbarian society and picked Andraste out of there. And then Maric continues that, which I'm assuming is probably part of a chant. "And thus fell the eye of the Maker upon Andraste. He who would be raised up from outcast to become his bride. From her lips would fall the chant of light. At her command would the legions of righteousness fall upon the world." And so he continues, basically shows off that he's educated. She acknowledges that, and then there's a reference here which I thought was cool, which is about, people forget that Ferelden wasn't always as it is now, the homeland of the Maker's prophet. Once it was reviled by the civilized world. She smiled gently, her eyes twinkling. "Sometimes that which is most precious can be found where you least expect it to. Lines like that are important because, especially coming from someone who is, I mean, in this case, she's of the Chantry, but especially when it comes from a mystical character, lines like this have import. This would probably come back and mean something later on. Sometimes that which is most precious can be found where you least expect it to. Okay, so there's a fun exchange here that happens between Loghain and Sister Ailys, where he barges into this hut, and it's almost like his suspicion is in his eyes, and he says, so he's decided not to sleep the entire day away. And she says, he's doing better. His injuries were not inconsiderable. You did well to bring him here, Loghain. And he says, we'll see about that. Has he said anything to you? And Maric, I'm right here. I love that Loghain is like, I don't know who the hell you are. I'm suspicious of you. Shut up. Let me talk to my people. Oh, Loghain. And so we're back. Good audio is back in play while cutting this thing together just to make sure I knew where I was at so that when I continued, I could continue on the right page. I did re-listen to what I was saying about the line being important, that when a mystical character says something like, sometimes that which is most precious can be found where you least expect it to. And I was already pondering, like, this is going to be important, this is going to be important. Well, yeah, it's already important because she legitimately put herself into this community just in case something precious like Maric ended up in a community like this. And then what do we have? We have a parallel here between Maric coming to a community like this, someone who's the rightful heir of Ferelden, who's on his legacy quest, right? And they both just shared an exchange between both of them where she talks about that when the Maker returned to the world, he didn't go to Tevinter, he didn't go to the places that worship the Maker the most. He went to the fringes of society to find his bride, to find Andraste. Once he found her and the Chant of Light came about, at her command would the legions of righteousness fall upon the world. Parallelism here, because I'm going to speculate here. Please don't spoil inside the chat if you've already read past this point. But my speculation with just this one page, and we're 5 pages into what I call establishing the story. Like, what are we going to do? Meeting the characters that are going to be relevant, and then picking up these pieces here that there's going to be callbacks on, right? The whole callback thing. Parallelism here is Maric's going to raise this group of people as his first kind of group, or there's going to be people in this encampment that's like part of what's the father's name now? Shoot, because I'm sort of just starting up again. Gareth? Part of Gareth's men or Gareth's troops or something about this community is going to be Maric's rebel army against Orlesians, against the people who took out his mother. That's my speculation. Please don't spoil in the comments. I'm going to keep reading now. I'm back on track. I'll catch you on the next piece. Look at that. 2 pages later, he meets Gareth. Maric makes a comment there where he's known men like this in his life. The sort of men who were commanders in his mother's army. The sort of men who breathed and lived discipline their entire lives. Odd that he should find such a man here. What did I just say? Ooh, next paragraph. So Loghain is still looking at him with eyes of suspicion. Like, he's not, something's not cool and something's not right with Maric. And Maric is wondering, like, what the hell did I do to this guy? Like, why is he so pissed? And then in italics, which are the thoughts of the character, in this case, Maric, it's because you lied to him and still are. He reminded himself, and also because you're an incompetent boob. So there you go. That's the self-doubt mixed with the fact that he's realized that he is not being true to himself, true with himself. He's not the truth yet. It's good. Good start. Oh snap! So he introduced himself to Gareth. They have their greetings, and then Gareth just says, so my son tells me that you have some trouble in Lothering. So what's up, bro? And Maric says, well, ran into some trouble, and I was running away from a couple men. How many men? I don't know, it seemed like a lot. And all in the forest? Could it be Ban Siorlik's men? Because, I mean, he's not even from these parts. So, are you sure about that? Do you know why that might have been? And, of course, at this point, Maric's like, so I'm a terrible liar. Not something he would consider a very kingly virtue. Being a liar. And then he says, they chased me after they killed my friend. And then Gareth just stares at him and says, your friend or your mother? Burn! Burn! Of course, Sister Aelis had told him. That was within 3 pages. It's like I said, he told someone, and that crap was going to get out, man. This is a tight-knit community. There's a reason why they've been out here. There's a couple pages ago that they've been out here for months. There's a reason why it works, man. Gareth and Loghain are just grilling Maric right now, man. He's getting stuck in these lies, and he can't get out of it. He can't get out of it. And Gareth is all about these are my people. If someone is after you, if the king has sent men after you, why is that the case? And I need to know, because I need to protect my people. And it's just going back and forth with this, and it ends with Loghain just yelling out he's lying. Oh jeez. And he drew his belt knife and stepped forward menacingly. Let me kill him, father. This is my fault. I should never have brought him here. Woo-wee. Well. Oh, so as Gareth tries to calm his son down, so that Maric can stay, just to give him a place, like, despite the fact that he thinks that Maric is screwing with him, he's then given he just wants to know if his people will be safe, and Maric just steps up and says, nope, if you keep me, you're screwed. That's a summary. If you keep me, you're screwed. And Loghain is willing to kill him, just outright. We don't need this trouble. Father won't let him. So it's an interesting quabble right here, because Loghain is just willing to make that choice, right? And we've seen that in the game. He's a very irrational. He makes choices, and then he just owns them. And if that's the best choice, very pragmatic in a very dangerous way. And it's shown right here, even when he was young. His father taught him no restraint. Maybe that's something he picks up after the in Origins, after the trial. You know, we have a break, and we have the introduction of a new character called Potter, who is, and I'm conveying this as soon as I find it, just so I can kind of have this be like organic. One of the small contingent of elves who traveled with the camp, Potter could be counted on to do little more than laze about and spread idle gossip. So there's usually a character that you put into stories that is the conveyor of knowledge, like the catalyst for things triggering, and I'm making a call that Potter is going to probably be that. I have to read more to see like what the context is of how close Potter is to Loghain, because it could just be a character that's probably is like a red shirt. It's probably being set up to die at the end of this chapter. We'll find out. Oh damn, he's like missing one of his ears, and he has a scar that runs down his face, leaving one empty eye socket and a permanent sneer. That's the sign of a bad dude. This guy's gonna be tainted. This guy's gonna be a piece of crap. It's a telltale sign. Scarred character. He's the bad guy. No. But I mean, probably. He's gonna betray or something. We'll see. A couple interesting comments. One being Loghain mentioning that, you know, everyone in this camp has secrets. So he feels like he has to give this Hiram, Maric, the benefit of the doubt as well, but that he can't help but think that he's got like a danger sense that goes on, and he can't help that it's going off like crazy right now, and that they should be bailing. There's another mention of how he believed that Sister Aelis was kind of a boon to the camp, because she was able to get information from newcomers more easily than he or his father could. There's also a mention of his father showing compassion, and that's sometimes his weakness, sort of thing. And Loghain also at one point believed that Sister Aelis and his father would get together, but because she's devoted to the chantry and he's sort of been different since leaving the farmstead or the farmhold, it's just nothing ever came about from it, and then it looks like I'm in the piece of the chapter right here where the names, like I said, right? It's the names are going to start getting dropped, and these names are going to have relevancy. So there's another name that gets dropped right here, Paddock, and I just hit the name, and I started like talking right away just so I could get a little bit blind here. Right beside Paddock, of course, is Danon, who was introduced in the first chapter, who was the other guy who helped Maric, or helped Loghain help Maric escape and get to this camp. So let's see what these two are up to. Can't be anything good because they stopped whispering as soon as Loghain approached them. Here we go. Some interesting dichotomy here, because Paddock is saying, like, so what? So we got this blonde kid around, who, even if someone is chasing him, why would they come all the way here to pick him up? And Danon is already thinking, like, people are anxious to pick up and go. Like, where do you stand, right? Loghain says instead, but if you want to join the cowards, Danon, why don't you go ahead and do that? And then he responds, you said yourself that this boy is dangerous. And Loghain responds, I said we don't know who he is. We will soon enough, and if my father thinks it's worth us leaving, then he'll say so. So despite what Loghain even believes and feels, that it's like the flight is, the trigger is going off, he's going to follow his father and whatever his father says. And then Danon shoots back, this is your doing. You're the one who wanted to bring him here. And then he storms off. Now Paddock is there because he's keeping an eye on whether or not the scouts that they sent out to see if these three were being followed last night, he's out there to see if they've come back, and they haven't. They're still out there, and a couple hours have passed now, and it seems odd because at least some of them should have returned. So it already looks like something's probably gone south, and I don't know, maybe the band was still following, and the band took them out. So it looks, I suspect something's going to go south very quickly at the end of this chapter. I think there's about 13 pages left of chapter 2. I'm halfway through chapter 2, so I got a quarter left of establishing the story to find out what's going to come down to this, but I'm thinking this is going to escalate very quickly. The juxtaposition, once again, brought up here between Loghain and his father, where Loghain thinks that, you know, in a settlement like this, like, they're being fed, they're being taken care of. Sister Aelis kind of unites them. The father gives them sort of banner, like metaphorically speaking, to hang around, and the father would say stuff like that in the worst of times that people needed to cleave together the strongest, and whenever Gareth would say that, Sister Aelis would smile at him and get all teary-eyed. For that single moment, that faith of his father's would seem like it could almost be true, but Loghain knew better. If things ever got bad enough, Danon wouldn't be the only rat to abandon the sinking ship. So Loghain takes off to check for himself what the hell has happened with these scouts that haven't returned. Some symbolism going on here. We're at a new break here where Loghain is backtracked on stuff, and he's close to Lothering now. He's heading towards Lothering, and dusk falls, and then this storm begins, releasing torrents of icy cold rain. Symbol of storms, man. A storm is coming. Anything with it, whenever there's like rain involved or whatever, it usually signifies that there's something kind of foreboding that's about to happen, something that's gonna turn around. And yeah, always pay attention to rain and storms. It's a symbol that has an emotional subtext behind it, something to pay attention to. Oh, and now we have the lightning flared in the gray sky and rain intensified, but Loghain's leathers were already as dry, so that doesn't matter because the point is the lightning has flared. That's it. This is going to be the trigger. Something's about to land on the reader. Let's see what it's going to be. Let's see what it's going to be. So he's coming onto the path right now. There's a rider coming down the path as well, and there's some uncomfortableness because I would presume because of brigands and stuff like that. And Loghain puts his bow on the ground just to kind of diffuse any tension that might be going down with this rider. And Loghain's just like, hey, I'm just looking for friends, man. They're my friend. Have you seen anyone who looks like me? I guess people dressed in leather that look like sketchy brigands. I don't know why anyone would admit to that, but he says no. Oh. He says, I haven't seen anyone, but they could be in Lothering. It's filled with people right now. They're sleeping on the streets. And Loghain's like, what? Like, Lothering is filled with people? Oh, what? Like, yeah. Oh, you haven't heard? The riders seem genuinely surprised. No, nothing. The rebel queen is dead. There it is. That was the lightning. That was the sign. Something was going to turn something around. There it is. The rebel queen is dead. The rider sighed, sadly adjusting his hood as the rain splattered down. Bastards finally caught her in the forest last night. I tried to see the body before I left, but there were too many mourners. They say the young prince might be dead too. If you'll pardon my saying so, let's hope that isn't true. Loghain's blood went cold. The prince? She repeated numbly. Well, then you're lucky he's still out there somewhere. Considering all the soldiers I saw, he'd better be running for his life. As the rain continued to pour, the rider nodded politely and gave Loghain a wide berth as he passed by. There it is, Loghain, and then the last sentence here. Loghain remained where he was, his mind racing. Lightning flashed high overhead. It's good. It's good. Jesus, I just burned through a couple pages there, man. I got caught up in everything that just went down, and I actually got chills on this part, which is where I'm going to stop so I can try to catch up and get around to it. So I'll be honest, I don't even know where I left that thing off. I think I left off with the oh yeah, the lightning crashing overhead, right? Okay, so it gets back to camp, and Maric is in that log hut with the sister, and Gareth kicks open the door of the hut, storms towards Maric, grabs him, and just like, who are you? Like, the men are coming through the forest. The sister's trying to slow him down. He's getting all riled up, and he's ready to take this guy out. Like, he's at this point, he's like, something's going down. I got to protect my people. And then, who are you? Who are you? And then, of course, Loghain rushes in, and of course that beautiful line of, I know who he is, and then he rushes him in like 2 steps, puts a knife to his throat, and he's the prince. And instead of course that turning into a scenario that I guess Loghain might have been anticipating, where the father would have just backed him up and like, let's just kill this maniac because he's going to kill all our people, he takes hold of Loghain's sword arm that's up against Maric's neck, and there's like a struggle of like, you're not going to do this sort of thing, like this is the king now, man. And so he throws his son down. Gareth throws Loghain down, and the father he just says he's the prince, and he doesn't even say anything else, just he's the prince, as if that's all that needed to be said, and Loghain just needed to calm down. And then at that point they start hearing the terrified screams in the distance. The soldiers are already there, they're probably already picking people off, and Loghain snatches the blade from the ground. We give him to them because Maric is just like, look, I don't want any trouble, just give me up. If you just give me up, they won't do anything. They'll probably leave you all alone. I'll surrender without a fight. Just give me over and move and pick up your people and go. And he just says no. Gareth says that he served under his grandfather, and that if the Orlesians have taken the throne and the rebel queen is dead, then it's up to Maric to take. I gotta read this part because this is like that. This is the piece that I was waiting for, because that was the piece that was going to be integral to setting up the story of that first. It's usually 10%. The first 10% of whatever will set up something like this, which is that catalyst. You need that catalyst. So he says, the Orlesians don't belong on that throne, and if your mother's truly dead, then it's up to you now to remove them. He says, if I can help you do that, then I will give anything, even my life. Loghain, of course, steps in. He's like, no, are you nuts? Like, don't do this. And the father turns to him and says, Loghain, I want your word that you will protect the prince. Loghain says, I can't just leave you. Don't ask me to do that. I won't do it. And then father just says, your word, Loghain. And I love the fact that, Loghain is fighting it, but at the end of the day, it just shows again, Loghain, that trait of loyalty. Like, when he is like, Loghain is his word, and whoever he is loyal to, he's going to be that word to. And I think that's going to be the pattern that's going to keep happening with Loghain here, as he, I think, bonds with Maric, which I don't know when that's going to happen. It's probably going to take a while based on what's happening around here. And so Loghain nods. He agrees it's going to go down, and Gareth turns back towards Maric. Then you need to go now, your highness, quickly. There's another cool line here, actually, that he gets reminded of, that his mother once said, which is, of course, going back to that piece of legacy, like the legacy of the mother who died, and that the fact that that's become the theme of this book. And there's something he remembers that she said, which is, what they will give us freely, she had said, is never free for them. Remembering that is the only way we will be worthy of it. So it's the idea of like fealty. It involves giving back to the people, giving them a reason to give of themselves for that leadership. And then he asks Gareth, were you ever a knight? And Gareth says, no, your highness, I was a sergeant at arms once, then kneel. And I got chills, man. And I just got chills again just thinking it. It's just a great scene. You kind of feel it's going to come, but it's just, it fell like so perfectly. And then he kneels and he gets the sister to be the witness. And then, yeah, that's where I left off. That's where I had to catch up here, because I was getting way too far ahead of myself without leaving any thoughts. I got so absorbed in this. And that's it. And then in the name of Calenhad the Great, here in the sight of the Maker, I declare you a knight of Ferelden. Rise and serve your land, Sir Gareth. So he made him a knight, and now he's gonna stay behind and fight to the death if need be, while his son Loghain runs off and keeps Maric protected. And I still got 4 pages left or so I'll be back. And on their way out, the sister hands Maric a dagger that was so wicked looking that his eyes widened with surprise. That dagger is going to be important. It's going to be important. And it was just like it's in passing in a paragraph, but it's going to be important. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. Jesus, so the battle starts, and I mean, here we have Maric the Savage again. Loghain is trying to lead him out of the place. They're stepping over, like falling already, and Loghain's pissed, of course, and Loghain snaps, don't just stand there. And of course Maric is just standing there. He's mildly frozen, and he snaps out of it. He starts to move forward, and he's grabbed from behind, and he immediately spins around and jabs that dagger into this dude's neck, and it's game over. It's game over without even thinking. The soldier clutched uselessly at the wound. Thank God it was a soldier, huh? Thank God it wasn't like Gareth saying, good luck out there. Jesus. And that's it. They get to the edge of camp. They pause. They look at the battle. They see Gareth's last moments as he desperately swings the sword to take out the soldiers. The last of the soldiers that he possibly can, until he gives his final cry. And nothing is really said. Loghain just stares upon this, and then he grabs Maric's coat once again, practically pulling him off his feet, and he says, stay close or I swear I'll leave you behind. And Maric stays close. No more arguments for him. Nothing to be said. So that's the end of chapter 2. So yeah, I guess concluding thoughts at this point, we have a scenario where the story is that both of these protagonists that are fleeing from this encampment of criminals and whatnot, they both have lost a parent. And I believe both of them have a certain legacy that they are now bound to. Maric is bound to the legacy that's attached to the mother, the rebel queen, the proper rulers of Ferelden, and he's going to have to inherit that legacy once more. And we have Loghain, who has now lost his father Gareth, who was knighted right before he died, and he had served already under the grandfather. So he was already sort of attached to this family, to this lineage, and he finally gets knighted. So it's almost like the father gets the one thing that he never got in his life, but he gets to die with that knighthood, with that honor, and now he sort of kicks off a legacy that Loghain will need to, Loghain will, I believe, want to embrace at some point too. I'm not, like, right now it seems a little bit hard to foresee how Loghain is just going to align with Maric, because he would blame Maric for what went down, but at the same time we've already gotten evidence from Loghain being a follower. He is a follower at heart. He chooses the loyalty he gives to someone, and then that's it. And I don't think he's chosen the loyalty that he's given to Maric, but he had loyalty to his father, and his father had made him give his word to give his loyalty to Maric. And so I think by force he's given his loyalty, and I think that's what the book is going to develop as it goes. And I do think that both of these characters will have to come to terms with embracing that legacy, because that is the theme of this book. And I'll give my thoughts for the next pattern that will come up, and I'll kind of get into it at the beginning of the next episode before we get started reading, which will give an indication of what that pattern might be. It'll also trigger me to look out for those patterns as I read the next couple dozen pages of chapter 3, and it'll allow me to speculate on what I think that pattern is going to mean, what's going to come up, and what it might mean in the future of the book. And then I get to see if that all plays out, or to see if the story changes up the rules, because that's also part of the fun, is does the story change something to throw off those patterns. And both are fun. I will continue to do it for the rest of this book. It's just something that adds something different, something that I can talk about, something I can speculate on. It's some ideas that can float into the comment area. We can bounce ideas back and forth. And of course, if you know something from the future and I speculate, or if someone in the comments speculates, be careful with spoilers. Don't speak beyond the chapter that has been covered in this episode, just in case, just to protect people who might want to read along or go along for the ride, so they're not skimming comments and then tripping over some spoilers, including me. So until then, I will catch you in the next episode. Don't forget to explore, engage, and aspire. Peace, everybody.